Millionaire finds a girl sleeping in a park. What she whispers changes his entire life. A billionaire with everything except a soul. A little girl sleeping on a park bench. A missing mother. What started as a routine evening walk turned into a discovery that would unravel secrets buried for decades. He was cold, calculated, until one night forced him to feel. What if the child he rescued wasn't a stranger at all? This isn't just a story about wealth loss or even redemption. It's about the moment life blindsides you and changes everything. Stay with us because by the end, you won't see him the same way again. New York in early February didn't offer much kindness. The wind sliced through Fifth Avenue like it had somewhere to be, and the sky hung low heavy with the kind of gray that made people walk a little faster. Heads tucked down, minds set on getting somewhere warm. But not everyone had somewhere to go. At the corner of West 92nd and Riverside, beneath a cracked street lamp that buzzed more than it shone, a man stood behind a tinted window on the 42nd floor, watching the street below with the same detached interest one might give to falling snow. His name was Marcus Langford, and he owned more buildings in Manhattan than he could name from memory. To the world, Marcus was a real estate kingpin, a man who dined with senators, wore Tom Ford like it was gym wear, and could close 8-figure deals between bites of steak tartare. But inside his $25 million penthouse polished oak abstract art, not a single photo on the wall, he was just a man alone with the echo of his success. "Cancel the gala," Marcus said into his phone, not looking away from the window. "Double the donation. Tell them I'm out of town." His assistant didn't question it anymore. The man was unpredictable, but his checks always cleared. Marcus tossed the phone onto the velvet couch without care. His reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling glass, neatly trimmed beard flecked with gray eyes that didn't smile anymore, and a posture too straight for comfort. A man built like stone and about as warm. Only one creature in the world saw something different. Rue, his Belgian Malinois, padded silently into the room, nudging Marcus's thigh with her nose. Unlike the people in his life, she didn't need anything from him, except maybe a walk and the occasional leftover filet. "You and me again tonight, girl," Marcus murmured, crouching to scratch behind her ears. It was the only time in years that softness crept into his voice. The apartment behind them was a museum of wealth, pristine, cold, untouched. No family photos, no laughter, no signs that someone actually lived there except for the dog bowls in the kitchen. In the hallway, his housekeeper, Maria, zipped her coat. "Your dinner's in the fridge, Mr. Langford. Just heat it for 3 minutes." She always kept it brief, professional. But today Marcus noticed something on the counter, a photograph in a worn leather frame. Maria had left it behind by accident. In it, she was surrounded by a swarm of kids, all reaching for a birthday cake. Her eyes were brighter, her smile wider than he'd ever seen it in real life. "That yours?" he asked before he could stop himself. Maria turned, surprised. "Oh, yes. That's from my grandson's birthday last week. 6 of them now." Marcus said nothing. He just stared at the photo for a beat too long, then turned away. "You should put that away," he said flatly, "and lock the door behind you." Later that evening, under a sky bruised with night, Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk, Rue trotting beside him. They walked without a destination. This wasn't exercise, it was escape. The streets were half frozen, half asleep. People had retreated to warmth. Marcus moved past them all, couples holding hands, teenagers spilling out of diners, cabbies cursing the lights. He never stopped, never connected, until Rue did. At a park bench near the Hudson River, half buried in snow and shadow, the dog stopped. Her ears perked, her body stilled. Then without warning, she bolted forward. "Rue," Marcus hissed, grabbing the leash, but too late. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, he saw her nuzzling something small. No, someone. A girl. Couldn't be older than 9. She sat curled into herself on the bench knees, hugged tight, a frayed backpack clutched to her chest, like it held the whole world. Her coat was 2 sizes too big. Her shoes were duct-taped. And her face was calm, not happy, not scared, just still. Marcus approached slowly, unsure if this was real or a ghost of his own guilt. "You know this isn't a shelter," he said gruffly. The girl blinked, looked up at him with eyes too old for her age. "I wasn't bothering anybody." Her voice wasn't defiant, just plain like a fact. "Where are your parents?" "My mom's coming back," she said. "She told me to wait here. She just went to get some work." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't a crack, not yet, but maybe a whisper of pressure. When did she say that 5 days ago? He stared at her. 5 days. 5 nights. In the cold. On this bench. Rue curled up beside the girl, resting her head on the kid's thigh like they'd known each other forever. "She's not coming back, is she?" the girl asked quietly. Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stood there feeling the wind cut through his coat and wondered for the first time in years what the hell he was supposed to do next. For someone who ruled over hundreds of luxury addresses, Marcus Langford had never been more unsure about unlocking the door to his own. Rue walked ahead like she'd done this 1,000 times. The little girl followed close behind, silent, her backpack still gripped, like it might float away if she let go. The elevator ride to the penthouse was awkward. Too quiet. The kind of silence that echoed. She looked up once at the mirrored walls, then back down at the marble floor. "You hungry?" Marcus asked without looking at her. She nodded. Just once. He'd found her sitting in a snow-dusted park alone, waiting for a mother who hadn't returned in 5 days. He should have called the police, Child Protective Services, a shelter. But instead, he'd taken her home. Why, he didn't know. Maybe it was Rue. Maybe it was the way she never cried. Inside, the penthouse lights flicked on automatically. Cool, white, sterile. Designed to impress, not comfort. The girl looked around slowly. Her eyes didn't widen with wonder like a tourist. She just whispered, "It's so quiet." Marcus led her to the kitchen. He wasn't sure what kids ate. Maria always left plated dinners that looked like art installations. He opened the fridge. Leftover coq au vin, truffle risotto, half a lobster tail. He reached for something simple. Reheated spaghetti, poured her a glass of juice. She ate quietly, small bites, careful not to spill. The silence returned, except for Rue now resting at her feet like a bodyguard. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Aria," she replied. "Aria. Just Aria." He nodded. "I'm Marcus." "I know," she said, not looking up. He blinked. "You do?" She nodded. "You're on the cover of real estate magazines at the bodega. My mom called you the Glass King. Said you build buildings that look like they're made of ice." Marcus didn't know what to do with that. He felt like someone had peeled back a layer of armor without warning. After she finished eating, he showed her to one of the guest rooms. He chose the smallest one, still bigger than most people's apartments. Bathrooms through there, fresh towels in the drawer. No pajamas, but I'll figure something out. Aria nodded again. "Thank you." She walked in and closed the door behind her without another word. Marcus stood there a second longer, unsure what he'd just done. He never let anyone stay. Not clients, not friends, what few he had. This wasn't part of his rules. He returned to the kitchen, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, and sat at the massive dining table. The silence hit harder now. Before it had been normal. Tonight it felt loud. He didn't sleep. Instead, he paced. Checked the hallway. Listened for sound. At 2:14 a.m., he passed the guest room. The door was cracked open. She was asleep, curled under the covers, arms wrapped around her backpack. Rue had climbed into bed beside her head resting against her back. Marcus stood there a while, just watching. Then, without thinking, he sat on the floor outside her door, his back to the wall. Not because she needed him, but because somehow he needed to know she was still there. The smell of toast was the first thing Marcus noticed when he stepped out of his bedroom. Not his usual breakfast. Maria hadn't arrived yet, but somehow toast. He found Aria perched at the kitchen island, legs swinging slightly beneath the stool. A slice of bread was sticking out of the toaster, half burnt. "I didn't touch anything else," she said quickly, sensing his surprise. "Just the toaster. I figured even rich people need toast." Marcus almost smiled. "Not bad logic," he replied, reaching for the coffee machine. "You sleep okay?" She nodded. "Your dog snores." He poured himself a mug. "I do too." They shared a silence that felt oddly familiar. Then the doorbell rang. Marcus froze. It was barely 8 a.m. No one came to this building without an appointment. He checked the monitor. 2 men, suits, badges. Of course. He opened the door slowly, already bracing. "Mr. Langford," one asked. "Yes." "Detective Rayner. This is Officer Delgado. We received a report of a minor seen in the park last night. Alone. Possibly abandoned." Marcus didn't respond right away. "We traced the security footage from a nearby ATM. You brought her here." "She's safe," Marcus said. "That may be. But we need to speak with the child. And we're required to contact Child Protective Services." "She just needs time," Marcus said. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't plead. But there was something in his tone, steel beneath ice. The officer glanced at his partner. "Sir, you can't just take in a child like a houseplant." "I didn't take her," Marcus said. "I found her. No one else was looking." "She's not your responsibility," Rayner added. Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. "Talk to her." They entered cautiously. Aria was still at the kitchen island, Rue at her feet, tail thumping once. "Hi, Aria," Officer Delgado said gently. "Can we ask you a few questions?" She looked up, calm but guarded. "Is my mom in trouble, no, sweetie?" Delgado said. "We're just trying to understand what happened, where she might be." "She went to check on a job," Aria replied. "Said she'd be back in a few hours. That was 5 nights ago, and you stayed in the park the whole time." "Yes." "Did anyone come looking for you?" "No." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Aria glanced at Marcus. "Because people like us don't get found." The room went quiet. Rayner exhaled slowly. "Aria, for tonight, we'll need to take you to a temporary shelter, just until we find your mom." Marcus didn't move. Neither did Rue. Aria just looked down. Okay. It was that simple. No protest, no fear, just resignation. Like she'd done this before. Marcus followed them to the elevator. The doors began to close. Then he spoke. "Where will you take her?" Delgado looked at him. "West Side Youth Shelter. It's safe." Safe. Marcus had funded the expansion of that shelter 2 years ago. For a tax break. He'd never stepped inside. As the elevator descended, Marcus stood in the empty hallway. The echo of his own choices surrounded him. That night, the penthouse was back to silence. Maria had left dinner in the fridge. He didn't touch it. He stood in the guest room doorway, the bed still unmade, a small sock under the chair. Rue paced unsettled, and for the first time in years, Marcus Langford picked up his phone, not to make a deal, not to command, not to control, but to ask for help. "Hi, this is Marcus Langford. I need to file a missing person report for a woman named Elena Harper. She's the mother of a girl named Aria. I think something's wrong." The search started with a name, Elena Harper, and a gut feeling Marcus couldn't shake. He didn't know why he'd dealt with missing persons before. At a distance, a donation here, a grant there, the right headlines to show he cared. But this was different. This was Aria's mother. He hired a private investigator within the hour. Her name was Naomi Trin. Smart, fast, zero tolerance for posturing. She arrived at Marcus's office that same afternoon, carrying a tablet and a cold look that told him she didn't care who he was. "You want fast? I need details," she said. She was cleaning buildings, under the table stuff. Aria said they moved a lot. Naomi nodded. Undocumented income, no fixed address. Harder, but not impossible. Marcus handed her the only photo. Aria had a bent, blurry snapshot from the girl's backpack. Elena in jeans and a fast food visor, smiling with her arm around Aria at a bus stop. Naomi stared at it. "This is enough. Give me 24 hours. She was gone before Marcus could thank her. That night, he found himself scrolling through the contact list in his phone, the names of city officials, CEOs, architects, partners. And then he saw it, Ridgepoint West Construction, one of his own subsidiaries. A pit started forming in his stomach. He made the call. "Tell me who's managing labor contracts on Ridgepoint West." A pause. Then a voice replied, "That site's outsourced to TGR Staffing, cleaning security grounds. We don't oversee it directly." "Of course not. Layers on layers, designed that way, by men like him." He ended the call and stared at the floor. The next morning, Naomi returned. "I found her." Marcus stood up too fast. "Ware County General, admitted 5 nights ago. Head trauma, internal bleeding, no ID. She was filed as a Jane Doe." She slid her tablet across the desk. Marcus looked down. There she was. Elena, pale, unconscious, tubes in her arms, machines doing the work of breath and heartbeat. She was working after hours, Naomi explained. A cleaning job. Something collapsed. Metal shelf wasn't bolted in properly. She was crushed. Marcus didn't speak. Naomi continued. "The site was Ridgepoint West. Your project." Silence. Then she added more gently. "She's been in critical care since. The hospital didn't know who to call." Marcus nodded slowly. "I need to see her. Today, at the hospital. Time moved differently." The nurse led him down a hallway that smelled like bleach and fear. 412. Inside, the beep of machines kept time in the background. Elena looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. A woman who had raised a daughter alone in the margins, now wired into a system that had only noticed her once she was broken. Marcus sat beside her. He didn't touch her hand. He couldn't. Instead, he whispered, "Aria's okay. She's safe. She waited for you for 5 nights. I found her." "No. She found me." He paused, swallowing the words he didn't know how to say. "I'm sorry. For everything." Behind him, the door clicked open. Naomi's voice was low. "Doctor says she's stable, but still unconscious. They're hopeful." Marcus stood. "I want a specialist flown in. Whatever she needs. She needs a voice to wake up," to Naomi said. That little girl's voice, probably. And then Marcus understood. It wasn't just guilt. It wasn't just responsibility. It was something older, deeper. He'd failed someone. A long time ago. Maybe two people. And now he had a choice. The next morning, Aria stood at the hospital entrance, clutching Duke's leash with both hands. Her eyes were wide but not scared. Just bracing. She might not wake up right away, Marcus said, kneeling beside her. The doctors think she can still hear you, Aria nodded once. She hadn't asked many questions on the ride over, just stared out the window, fingers fidgeting with the frayed strap of her backpack. The elevator ride felt endless. Room 412 hadn't changed. Machines still beeped. Tubes still ran across Elena's body like vines over a forgotten garden. But the air felt different now. Charged. Expectant. Aria didn't rush. She walked in slow, like her little feet were carrying something sacred. Marcus stayed near the door, watching as she reached her mother's bedside. "Hi, Mom." Her voice trembled but held steady. "It's me. I waited at the park like you said. I wasn't scared." Her hand found her mother's. "I met Mr. Marcus. He has a big house. And a dog. You'd like him. He lets me eat pancakes for dinner." Duke rested his head on the edge of the bed tail, gently wagging. The silence in the room grew thick, too full to be empty. Marcus looked away. Let her have the moment. But then Aria said something that stopped his breath. He said, "You're a fighter." I think he's right. So, can you fight now? Just a little more so you can come home. Elena didn't move, but the monitor showed a spike. Just a flicker. Doctor said that means she hears me right. Aria turned hopeful. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, I think she does." She turned back to her mother. "I brought you something." From her backpack, she pulled out a wrinkled drawing. 3 figures, a dog, a bench, and above them, "When we're all home again." She placed it on the pillow beside her mother's face. "Can I stay a little longer?" she asked. Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. He just nodded. He watched as Aria leaned in and pressed her forehead to her mother's arm. Not crying, just holding on. He stood there for a long time. Not as a businessman, not as a rescuer, just as a man watching a child do what he didn't know how to do, believe in someone coming back. That night after they returned home, Aria fell asleep with Duke curled protectively against her side. Marcus sat alone in the kitchen, turning the drawing over and over in his hands. 3 people. A dog. A future. He poured himself a drink, then stopped. He didn't want it. He just wanted answers. And in the silence of the house, the question finally took shape. What if Aria wasn't just someone's daughter? What if she was his? The next morning, Marcus didn't go to work. He found himself standing outside a weather-worn building just off Grant Street, tucked between a pawn shop and a boarded-up deli. A gold-lettered plaque read, "Wren Caldwell, Private Investigator." He hadn't spoken to Wren in nearly 3 years. Last time she'd vetted a potential investor who turned out to be laundering money. She was quick, thorough, and didn't care about titles. Inside the office was exactly as he remembered, faintly citrus-scented, lined with dusty blinds, and cluttered with open files. Wren was behind her desk, no makeup, her sleeves rolled up, already working a case. She looked up, eyebrows raised. "Marcus Hale. Now there's a name I haven't seen in a while. Lost another billion, or just your peace of mind?" He almost smiled. Almost. "I need you to find someone," he said simply. Wren set her pen down. "All right. Who Elena Rivera? She might be using another name now. He handed over a photograph creased from years in a drawer. Elena at 20, barefoot in the sand, smiling through a sun flare. Wren studied the photo. College, New York. 19 years ago. Wren didn't ask why he had an old photo or why his voice shook when he said the name. Do you have a date of birth? Marcus hesitated. June 3rd, I think. Wren scribbled it down, already flipping open a laptop. Last known contact. She applied for a position at Hale Properties years ago. I found her name in HR records. Wren blinked, and they rejected her. Without ever telling me she applied. He looked away. She had a daughter, 9 years old. Aria. At that, Wren paused. I need to know if there's a chance. She's mine. The words landed heavy, like he'd never said them aloud before. Wren nodded slowly. I'll need blood samples, but first let me track Elena's history. Name changes, employment records, medical files. Give me 24 hours. He left her office feeling lighter and heavier all at once. That evening, Marcus sat in his study, flipping through an old yearbook he hadn't opened in decades. Elena's photo stared back, shy smile, wild curls. He remembered the way she'd rest her head on his shoulder during late-night subway rides. How she always carried a pen in her pocket, scribbling poems on napkins. The way she'd once whispered, "You could disappear into success, and I'd still see you." He hadn't seen her since graduation. Did she ever try to reach him? Did she write? Did he even notice? As he stared at the photo, Duke padded into the room and nudged a small backpack closer to him. Aria's. A thin notebook slipped from the side pocket. He hesitated, then opened it. Pages filled with childish scrawls and doodles. But tucked in the back was a single page different from the rest, more careful, in an adult's handwriting. Elena Rivera, now Elena Reyes, it read. If anything ever happens to me, please let someone know that Aria deserves more than I could give her. Below, in faint pencil, Marcus Hale. The name hit him like a brick. She remembered. And for the first time in 2 decades, he let himself wonder, what if she never stopped thinking about him? What if Aria was the piece of their past neither of them could leave behind? The hospital room didn't sleep. Even at midnight, the machines clicked and hummed, drawing quiet lines of light across the pale blue walls. Marcus sat slouched in the bedside chair, arms crossed, one ankle resting on his opposite knee. He hadn't moved in hours. Elena lay motionless, her face turned slightly toward the window. The bruises had faded now. What remained was the quiet, a silence more piercing than any sound. Beside her, Aria slept in a small cot, her arms wrapped around a fraying stuffed bear Marcus had picked up from the gift shop. Duke lay curled beneath her bed, occasionally twitching in a dream. Marcus exhaled slowly, fingers pressed to his temples. He'd spent his whole life closing doors behind him emotionally, professionally, personally. Now sitting here in the stillness with this girl asleep and her mother half gone, the doors refused to stay shut. He stood quietly and stepped closer to Elena's bedside. I never thought I'd see you again, he said, voice just above a whisper. And I never imagined you'd be here like this. A heartbeat monitor beeped slow and steady. He brushed a stray hair from her cheek. Aria's been drawing pictures of you every day. She thinks you'll wake up just to see them. A pause. She might be right. Just then, her fingers twitched, barely noticeable. Marcus froze. He leaned in. Elena, he said softly. Another twitch. This time, her hand moved slightly toward the edge of the bed, where Aria's drawings were scattered. Marcus called out low, but urgent nurse footsteps padded down the hall. Within seconds, the room filled with soft voices, a doctor, a nurse checking vitals. Her eyes fluttered. Twice. Then stilled. "She's transitioning into a lighter state of consciousness," the nurse said, looking between Marcus and the monitor. "Could be hours. Or days. But she's coming back." Marcus didn't speak. He just nodded. The nurse left. The silence settled again. Then a voice quiet cracked. "Aria!" Marcus turned. Elena's lips were barely parted. Her eyes, though glassy, were half open. He stepped to the side of the bed. "She's here," he said. "She's safe. She's waiting." Elena's eyes drifted toward the small cot. "Marcus!" She breathed. It wasn't a question. It was a memory reawakened. "I'm here," he said, and for the first time in his life, he meant it in every sense. Her eyes closed again, not unconscious, but tired. Her fingers, though, reached toward the cot. A small, sleepy voice stirred. Mom Aria was awake, already climbing from the bed, her voice trembling. Marcus knelt and steadied her. "Easy. She's awake, but she's very weak." Aria looked over, eyes wide with a mix of wonder and fear. "Can I talk to her just for a minute?" he said. Aria moved to her mother's side and slipped her small hand into Elena's. Elena's fingers curled just barely around her daughter's. "Hi, Mom," Aria whispered. "I waited. Like you said." A tear slipped down Elena's cheek. No words. But she was here. Marcus turned away. He didn't want them to see the way his throat was tightening. He walked to the hallway, leaning against the wall, staring at nothing. Inside him, something cracked open softly finally. The kind of break that lets light in. He didn't need the DNA results. He didn't need confirmation. Aria was his. He felt it. And somehow, Elena knew it too. The early morning light crept into the hospital room, pale and soft, touching every surface like it was afraid to wake anyone. Marcus stood by the window, coffee in hand, untouched. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Behind him, Elena slept, this time real sleep. Not the kind induced by machines or trauma, but something natural. Earned. She had spoken just a few words since waking. Most of them were Aria's name. Marcus had stayed quiet, letting her recalibrate to the world one breath at a time. Now she stirred again, eyes opening slower than before but clearer. He turned and walked to her bedside. "Morning," he said quietly, careful not to disturb the hush. Her eyes met his. The recognition was sharper this time. Heavy. "Marcus." Her voice was still hoarse but stronger. "How long?" 17 days, he said. "You've been in and out. But mostly out." She nodded slowly, taking it in. "And Aria, she's safe. At my place, with Duke. She's been incredible." A small, tired smile ghosted across Elena's lips. "She always is." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was loaded. With questions, with memories, with everything they hadn't said. "I didn't know," Marcus finally said. "About her, about you. If I had," I know, Elena interrupted gently. She looked away, her gaze drifting toward the window. "I tried once," she added after a pause. "Years ago. I sent something to your office. Never heard back." Marcus stiffened. I never got it. Doesn't matter now," she said, though the weight in her voice told a different story. "I wish it didn't," Marcus said. "But it does." Another silence passed, this one softer. "I read her journal," he admitted. "Yours too." Elena didn't flinch. She just nodded. "I saw everything you did to keep her safe, keep her alive." Her hand, still resting near the blanket, flexed slightly. "You did more than survive," Marcus added. "You built her world. You gave her everything." A single tear slipped from Elena's eye. I tried, she whispered. It was never enough. It was more than enough, he said. And now, it doesn't have to be just you. She turned her face toward him. I want to help, Marcus said. Not out of guilt, not just because of what happened, but because I missed it, her growing up. And I don't want to miss any more. The words hung between them raw. She calls you James, Elena said quietly, a weak smile tugging at her lips. Like it's nothing. I told her to call me Marcus. She ignored that. Elena's smile deepened. She never listens when she already knows she's right. Footsteps echoed softly in the hallway. Then the door opened a crack. Can I come in? It was Aria. Her eyes were wide with hope, cradling a paper bag. I brought muffins, she added. Elena's hand lifted, trembling but open. Aria ran to her side and wrapped her arms gently around her. For a moment, neither mother nor daughter spoke. Their breathing aligned. Marcus stepped back. As he moved to leave, Elena caught his eye. Stay. That's all she said. One word, but it landed with weight. He nodded quietly, pulling up the chair. And for the first time since she collapsed, they sat together not as ghosts from a past long buried, but as something new. Maybe not a family. Not yet. But something real. And real was enough for now. The day Elena was discharged, the hospital felt colder somehow. Nurses lingered a little longer in the doorway. The doctor kept his tone extra careful. It wasn't just medical, it was the weight of what came next. Marcus waited by the elevator holding a simple bag of her clothes. No limo, no fanfare. He hadn't told anyone she was leaving today. Elena shuffled beside him, slow and unsteady on her feet, her left arm still wrapped in a support brace. She hated the wheelchair, insisted on walking, even if every step cost her. I can walk, she said when the nurse brought it. I've walked through worse. She wasn't just talking about the hospital. Marcus didn't argue. Downstairs, the car was waiting. Aria sat in the back seat, legs swinging, her face split into a wide grin. Mom, she shouted through the open door. You're finally free! Marcus helped Elena into the front seat, then got in beside Aria. It felt strange. 3 of them in one car. Quiet. Domestic. Unpracticed. Elena stared out the window most of the ride. Aria talked enough for both of them about school, about Duke, about the cupcakes Mrs. Alvarez had made too early and had to remake again. Marcus let it wash over them. At the house, Elena paused just before stepping inside. The doorway loomed tall, sterile in its perfection. I don't know where to put myself, she murmured. We'll figure it out, Marcus said, holding the door. Elena moved like a guest, her eyes flicking over the marble floors, the spotless surfaces. But Aria was already tugging her hand, pointing out the artwork on the fridge and the new toothbrush James had picked out himself. This room's yours, Marcus said gently, guiding her down the hallway. It wasn't the guest house, not yet. That conversation hadn't returned. For now it was the room across from Aria's, close but with space. Elena stood silently in the doorway. A clean bed, folded towels, a small glass vase with lavender. I wasn't sure what you'd like, he said. She nodded once. It's nice. But her voice was unreadable. Later, after Aria had gone to bed, exhausted from a day of holding herself together, Elena stepped onto the terrace. Marcus was already there, nursing a glass of something amber. He didn't speak, just handed her the blanket draped over the back of the chair. She sat beside him. The quiet is loud here, she said finally. I used to think it meant I was in control, he replied. Now it just feels empty. Elena pulled the blanket tighter. You don't owe me anything, Marcus. He turned to her, startled. Is that what you think? I don't want to be some redemption project? A story you fix? You're not, he said too quickly. You're you. And Aria she's my daughter. I want to be in her life. Not as a guest appearance. Fully. Elena looked away. I've spent years holding every piece together with tape, she said. Now I'm scared if I stop, everything might fall apart. It won't, he said. Not if we're both holding it. Her eyes flicked to his, searching for something. What if I don't trust you yet? He swallowed hard. Then I'll wait until you can. They sat there side by side in the quiet, not healed, not whole, but together. In the weeks that followed, life tried to settle into a rhythm, but rhythms are hard when trust is new. Elena moved slowly, both physically and emotionally. She spent long hours in the garden or watching Aria read. She helped cook when she had energy, slept when she didn't. She didn't say much, but her presence filled the house in a way that made it feel less like a museum. Aria thrived. Her laughter was louder, her drawings brighter. She'd taken to calling Marcus Dad without ceremony, as though it had always been waiting under the surface. Then came the headlines. Whitaker heir discovers secret daughter. Mystery woman linked to hospitalized real estate tycoon. A scandal or a redemption arc? The press had found out. A leak, maybe. A nurse with a camera. A loose-lipped investor. It didn't matter. The media had turned their lives into spectacle. Elena froze when she saw the paper. Marcus reacted first. He held a press conference, not coached, not strategic. Just honest. This is my family, he said, standing at the podium. I wasn't there before, but I am now. No more press appearances after that. No interviews, just one statement. Then silence. And when Elena asked why, he said simply, because I didn't say it for them. I said it for you. That night, Elena stood in the kitchen watching Aria eat cereal with Duke at her feet. She turned to Marcus, who was rinsing dishes like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know what this is, she said. He dried his hands, looked at her carefully. It's a beginning, he said. It started with a photo. One morning, Aria taped a Polaroid to the fridge door. No announcement, no permission. Just stuck it up between her drawings of Duke and a crooked rainbow. The photo was simple, blurry, off-center. Marcus was sitting on the couch, his tie loosened. Elena was asleep beside him, her head resting gently on his shoulder. Duke lay at their feet like a tired sentry. Aria must have taken it quietly, unnoticed. She didn't say a word, just added it to the growing collage of their life. That small act changed something. For the first time, Elena didn't reach to take it down. She just stared at it for a long while, and then smiled. Barely. But it was there. Marcus noticed. He didn't comment. But that night he framed it. A few days later, he handed Elena a key. To the house, he said, voice careful. I know you already live here, but I wanted you to have one anyway. Elena turned the key over in her hand, eyes unreadable. You sure I want you to choose to stay, he said quietly. Not just be here. Elena didn't answer right away, but she kept the key. That weekend, Marcus found her hanging new curtains in Aria's room, the ones with stars on them. I thought she'd like the night sky, Elena said. She never asked permission. He never wanted her to. Their days weren't perfect. Some mornings, Elena woke with pain and couldn't get out of bed. Some evenings, Marcus came home late and too quiet. But they tried. Dinners became rituals, simple meals always eaten together. Aria would chatter about school, Marcus would ask about homework. Elena would quietly slip in small stories from her day, a new recipe, a walk, a memory from a time before any of this. Marcus started leaving the office at 4, no exceptions. Not even for investors. He began taking Aria to school himself, memorizing the names of her classmates, learning the rhythm of her mornings. Elena began writing again. Short essays, letters she never sent, pieces of herself she hadn't touched in years. Some made her cry, some made her laugh. She didn't hide either from Marcus. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened. One rainy Thursday, Elena walked into his study and placed a small box on his desk. "What's this?" he asked. "Something you forgot," she replied. Inside was his old college journal, one he thought he'd lost. She'd found it in a box in the attic, tucked between forgotten documents and dust. Marcus thumbed through the pages. Dreams written by a younger man who thought love was a distraction and power was the prize. "Do you remember who you were then?" she asked. "I remember who I wasn't," he said softly. "I wasn't ready for this." Elena nodded. "Neither was I." He looked up at her, but now she shrugged, eyes soft but steady. "Now we get to choose." The first time Marcus asked if Elena wanted to move into the master bedroom, she didn't answer. Just changed the subject. 2 weeks later, he found her toothbrush in his bathroom. She never said a word. Neither did he. But he smiled. Some things didn't need permission. Only presence. It was late December when Aria climbed into their bed, during a thunderstorm, wedging herself in the middle. "I had a bad dream," she mumbled. Elena pulled her close. Marcus reached over and turned off the alarm clock. The storm rattled the windows, but inside it was quiet. Warm. "I think we should get a bigger bed," Elena whispered, half asleep. Marcus chuckled softly. "Or a smaller child." Aria snorted in her sleep, unconvinced. Weeks turned into rhythms. Rhythms turned into seasons. The house, once hollow, now breathed. Laughter echoed down the hallways. The fridge held more magnets than metal. The guest rooms filled with life school projects. Shoes left out, coats hung too low. And in the center of it all, the three of them, never quite perfect, but real. One evening, Marcus stood at the edge of the garden watching Elena help Aria plant something small, a seedling with delicate green leaves. "Will it grow?" Aria asked. "Only if we take care of it." Elena said, "Hands in the soil." Marcus didn't join them. He just stood there watching. Quiet. Grateful. Present. The auditorium lights buzzed softly above. Rows of metal chairs creaked under the weight of waiting parents. Some clutched phones, ready to film. Others whispered to each other, eyes on the red velvet curtain. It was the winter performance at Aria's school. Nothing fancy. Paper snowflakes taped to the walls. A cardboard fireplace in the corner. Handmade costumes stitched by overworked teachers and volunteers. But to Marcus, it felt bigger than any boardroom he'd ever stood in. He sat next to Elena, her hand resting on his thigh, calm and grounding. She was wearing a navy blue dress, simple, soft. The same color Aria had painted her mother in a crayon drawing, now stuck to the fridge at home. "I forgot how noisy these things get," Elena murmured, smiling. Marcus chuckled. "I forgot how nervous I can get when I'm not the one on stage." Elena leaned in her shoulder, brushing his. "She's not nervous. She told me this morning she's doing it for you." Marcus blinked. "For me," Elena nodded. "She said you missed so many performances before you knew her. She wanted to give you one now." The curtain creaked. A hush fell over the room. The music began slightly off-key but full of heart. Children appeared in rows. Some waved awkwardly at their parents. One boy sneezed and forgot his cue. And there in the second row, angel wings askew but smile steady Aria. She sang louder than anyone, not because she had the best voice, but because she had something to say, something only Marcus and Elena could truly hear. "We're not lost," her lyrics went. "We're just learning the way. And sometimes home is who you stay." Marcus felt something crack again, something tender, something old. Elena reached for his hand and squeezed. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. His eyes were locked on the little girl who had once curled up on a park bench with nothing but a backpack and hope. Now she had a song, a stage, a front row filled with love. After the performance, the crowd spilled out into the courtyard. Hot cocoa in paper cups, parents chatting, children buzzing with leftover adrenaline. Aria ran toward them, wings flapping. "You were amazing," Elena said, scooping her into a hug. Marcus crouched beside them, his voice thick. "I've never been prouder of anything in my life." "Even your skyscrapers," Aria teased, wiggling her eyebrows. "Especially them," Marcus replied. Behind them, one of the teachers approached, smiling warmly. "You have a remarkable daughter," she said, handing them a program. "And she speaks about you two with so much pride. She told me her family finally feels like a puzzle that fits." Elena smiled. Marcus didn't speak, but he felt it. The puzzle. The fit. That night, after Aria had fallen asleep, still wearing her angel wings, Marcus and Elena sat on the porch steps. The air was cold, but not unkind. "You remember when you said I was just staying in that house?" Marcus asked quietly. Elena turned to him. "Yeah. Well, I think I'm finally living there." She didn't answer right away, just looked out at the garden, the same one she'd helped Aria plant a month ago. A green shoot had broken the soil, tiny, trembling in the cold, but alive. "Things grow," she said simply, "if you let them." He nodded, then added, "I have something to ask you." Elena glanced over, eyes half curious, half wary. Marcus stood, pulled something from his coat pocket, a small wooden plaque newly carved. He handed it to her. Her breath caught. The words were simple. "The Harper Home Est." "This year." Elena ran her fingers over the engraving. "You're giving it our name." "No," Marcus said. "I'm asking if you'll give it yours." She looked up, startled. Marcus smiled. Not a pitch, not a proposal, just a man asking if they could make this house, this life, theirs. "I'll think about it," she said, though her eyes said more. And beside them, under the porch light, the small green sprout shivered again. Still new, still tender, but rooted and growing. 1 year later, the park looked different. The old wooden bench where Marcus had first found Aria was still there, but new. Sanded smooth, reinforced with steel legs, a fresh coat of varnish. A small brass plaque sat in the center of the backrest for the ones waiting in the dark. "May you be found." The city had turned the park into a community space. There was a little free library, a covered swing set, raised garden beds planted by local kids. The Whitaker Foundation had helped fund it quietly, no billboard, no ribbon cutting. Just the work. Just the space. A soft place to land. Marcus sat on the bench now, legs stretched out, a scarf around his neck. Elena sat beside him, sipping from a thermos of tea. A few feet away, Aria and Duke were in the grass. She was teaching him to play dead, which he did only when bribed with peanut butter. She giggled, loud, joyful. Elena leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "She's loud," he said with a grin. "She's home," Elena replied. They watched her in silence for a while. Other families passed by. A woman pushing twins in a stroller. A teenage boy helping his grandmother sit on a bench. Life moving quietly forward. Do you think we would have found her? Marcus asked if that night hadn't happened. If Duke hadn't pulled me to that bench, Elena didn't answer right away. But when she did, her voice was sure. I think she would have found you. He blinked, surprised. She has a way of lighting up the places that forgot how to shine, Elena added. Marcus nodded, taking that in. Behind them, a little girl was reading from a laminated sign by the swings. Who's Aria Harper? She asked her dad. He shrugged. I think she's the girl that helped change the park. Aria heard. She looked over at Marcus, eyes wide. I'm in the park. He laughed. You are the park. She ran to them, breathless. Can we go get ice cream? In December, Elena asked, eyebrow raised. Hot cocoa float. Marcus stood brushing the bench with his hand one last time. Lead the way, Harper. They walked off together. No speeches, no final twist. Just three people who had been broken in different ways, finding something whole in each other. At the edge of the park, Aria paused and turned. She looked at the bench for a moment, then whispered something no one heard. Maybe it was thank you. Maybe it was goodbye. Maybe it was just breath in the cold. Whatever it was, it stayed there, settled into the wood, the metal, the air. And the park, like the people who'd once passed through it in the dark, held it close, just in case someone else came looking. From a cold night in a quiet park, where a little girl waited alone for a mother who never came to the warmth of a home filled with laughter, love, and second chances. This was a journey no one saw coming. Marcus, once a man ruled by ambition, and numbers, found something money could never buy: connection, purpose, and a reason to slow down. Elena, a mother who carried the weight of the world, finally found a place to rest and rebuild. And Aria, the little girl with dirt on her cheeks and hope in her heart, became the thread that stitched them all together. This story reminds us that sometimes it's the quietest moments, the ones we almost overlook, that end up changing everything. So what's the lesson? You don't need a grand gesture to make a difference. Sometimes just showing up, choosing kindness, or listening when it matters most is enough to turn a life around. Maybe even your own. And what about you? What did this story make you feel? Have you ever met someone who unexpectedly changed your life? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And if this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. We'll see you in the next one.